Hello, everyone. Welcome to the third in our interview series with people who have adapted or worked in the world of Dracula. You might have noticed it is just me flying solo today. Unfortunately, Theo has some tech issues, but he is in the background typing away. And I am here with the wonderful Jonathan Barnes. Hi, thank you so much for being with us.
Hello, pleasure to be invited.
For anyone in our audience who might not know you or the work that you do, can you tell us a little bit about yourself and your work in the world of Dracula?
Yeah, sure, of course. No, I mean I've had a number of connections, I think, with Dracula over the years. Probably the most obvious thing is that I've written a sequel to Dracula. A few years ago, I sort of embarked on a project really to write some, as much as is possible, authentic sequels to great 19th century Gothic horrors which I've loved all my life. And the place where we started was the obvious place, really, which was a sequel to Dracula, an attempt to write a sort of authentic Stoker-esque sequel that's called Dracula's Child. I've followed that up with a sequel to H.G. Wells's classic novel, The Island of Dr. Moreau, and just at the time when I'm speaking, recently out is my sequel to Frankenstein, and there's one more to come in that sequel. So
Oh,
that's sort of part of my connection to Dracula. The other part, out of which the novel came in a way, is that I have adapted Dracula for that excellent audio company, Big Finish Productions, which starred Mark Gatiss as the Count. And I've also done a couple of other audio stories about Dracula, also starring Mark.
yes, that's where I first came across you was as we have that connection to Big Finish, and I really enjoyed it's a trilogy of Dracula. Starts off with the original, and then it sort of goes into its own story, which is really interesting. What was your first encounter with Dracula as a novel or in media, and what drew you to it, especially now that you've done so much in that world?
Well, I've always, I mean, almost as or not quite as from as an early as possible time I can remember, but I've always been a huge fan of that kind of story, those sort of fictions, that part of history actually as well. Particularly
Mm.
the 19th century. I always say, I've said this before, that my sort of gateway drug to all of it was Sherlock Holmes. I remember, I always say, originally inspired by seeing Disney, Basil the Great Mouse Detective. I saw on its release, which probably dates me slightly, but absolutely fell in love with that, and then straight away got into the Conan Doyle stories, and through that, that's a gateway, I think, to other sort of 19th century stories, sort of fantasy eclat stories. So yeah, my first encounter was kind of off the back of that. Pretty young, I would think, when I read Dracula. Borrowed my dad's copy, which had Dracula and Frankenstein in it. Pretty young, probably 10, 11, something like that. And yeah, absolutely loved it. I've always loved it. And then, kind of some years after that, being invited by producer Scott Hancock
Mm.
to come and do a very authentic adaptation of it. I fell in love with it all over again because, as you know, when you adapt something, you have to take it to pieces and put it back together again. And yeah, that process only increased my love of the book and admiration for Stoker.
Absolutely. How did that come about, being asked to adapt Dracula?
Well, all these things sort of have echoes. That was off the back, really, of having adapted Frankenstein. That's
Mm.
where at one time, Big Finish were brilliant at doing adaptations of kind of great and also out of copyright novels.
Yes, they did the Dorian Gray series for a long
I did
time.
Dorian Gray, which is very
Mm.
much Scott's baby was Dorian Gray, and Frankenstein. I think that was certainly the first time I worked with Scott, which was a result of having worked with Nick Briggs, who is now the executive
Mm.
producer of Big Finish and a great actor, a great writer. He was very keen to play the monster. Um,
Of course.
think that's how it started. I know that Scott was very keen for Arthur Darvill,
Mm.
who Doctor Who fans will remember from the Matt Smith era. He was very keen for Arthur to come in and do Victor. And then they said, okay, who can we find to write the script? And yeah, I think it was Nick that put my name forward. And then I adapted Frankenstein. I mean, Frankenstein, the adaptation, is less authentic because, for reasons which we can talk about another time. It's much harder to adapt, I think. Whereas because it's much less modern. Whereas Dracula, you can update it, as you obviously know and have done very kind of brilliantly. But if you go back to the original text, it seems so modern in lots of ways. The way in which it's paced is so modern.
And
That,
it is a proto found footage.
yeah, absolutely, yeah. I always think you could do a straight adaptation of Dracula, just the novel, and it would map on perfectly to the kind of Netflix
Yes.
format. You have kind of 10 episodes, and you do a chunk of story each time, because there's so much incident in it. Even in our Big Finish 3-hour version, you're still cutting loads of stuff out. I mean, it's absolutely packed with plot, isn't it, Dracula?
Oh yeah, definitely. I mean, do you have a favorite adaptation that you've seen of Dracula since coming into contact with it that isn't your own?
Well, I do think the Big Finish one is a pretty authentic one, in terms of what it includes. I mean, I love all the Draculas for different reasons, but whether there's really been an authentic version that captures the book, I mean, the sort of standard answer for this from the sort of Dracula aficionado, as you will know, is the BBC 1970s TV version, isn't it?
Yes, that's people say the most authentic, even though it cuts out a lot of characters and certain incidents. I don't think it has a Quincy. It is the least. It strays the least from the original text.
Yeah, they always end up cutting out, don't they? At least one of the tutors, or sort of combining them. It's very unusual to have them all. I think the Coppola does, doesn't it? Have all of the
It does, yes.
tutors. But that, I always think, really completely inverts the novel.
Yes.
Even though it's superficially faithful, it's actually really undercutting and subverting the book.
Yes, especially with how it treats Mina and Dracula. I mean, there's a lot of talk online about what is the best adaptation, and I think it's Coppola one is very good in terms of the cast and who it has to portray certain characters, but then in terms of the Mina subplot that it gives it, it's very controversial.
Not registered.
Yes. Do you have a favourite, Georgia?
In my head, I am slowly piecing together an adaptation with all like the scenes from various adaptations that I really like. That if you put them together, they make a complete Dracula. So I've always
Yes,
really,
there's always that frustration, isn't there, that you could just combine a whole bunch of them. I tell you one I'm quite taken with that I hadn't seen properly until quite recently, which is the what's it called? It's the Franco version, with Christopher Lee, who did it because he thought he was going to do a faithful version of Dracula. And what you have is you do have some actual chunks of dialogue from Dracula, the novel, in the first 20 minutes. Yeah, it's interesting. It's Jess Franco, isn't it? That was the movie director, which has moments that are similar and then moments which diverge wildly. Very odd sequence of a load of stuffed animals, like taxidermy animals, which
interesting.
is not from Stoker, but it has its moments.
Oh, interesting. I have to see that one. I've made a bit of a pilgrimage trying to see all the adaptations that I can in writing Holmwood. So it'd be interesting to see that one. I don't think we have yet. Yeah.
Oh, it's worth it, and it's got Klaus Kinski as Renfield, kind of in a different movie. Kind of great long scenes with him sort of off doing his own thing. Yeah, it's a fascinating oddity rather than a definitive version.
Interesting. We will definitely put it on the list. We've seen some interesting ones along the way, so it seems like another interesting one to watch. In all that, do you have a particular favorite character in Dracula?
SWB audio
Hmm.
capture not
Um,
registered.
One of the things he's so brilliant at is creating these kind of very vivid characters.
Mm.
And it's so interesting of Stoker, I think, that you read his other stories, you read his other novels, and you think, well, where's the
Yeah, where did
where's
these
all the
come
stuff
from?
that's in Dracula? Where's all the depth? Where's all the vividness? And they're often, I mean, they all have their fans and their defenders, but you read something like Jewel of the Seven Stars, or you read, obvious one, There and the White Worm, that completely sort of mad last novel, and everyone seems quite two-dimensional in comparison to the characters in Dracula. Even those sort of small characters like the sea captain, like Mr. Swales in Whitby, they all feel kind of like they could leave the story and go and have their own adventures, which is why so many of us come back and do exactly that, I think, because they seem to have this hinterland. Yeah, I mean, in terms of a favourite, I remember when I read it as a child, I was very taken to Jonathan Harker because, for the simple reason that he had my first name.
Oh, of course, yes.
I mean, Van Helsing is always fascinating because he's such an odd man. And
He
there's
is
so
such a
much else going.
character,
Yeah.
and so
And all,
different from what adaptations have then done with him.
well, they always have to simplify him, don't they?
Mm.
Because you've got someone who's got this sort of, great sort of backstory and all this other stuff going on in the novel, and this very sort of weird behaviour, and inevitably he's trimmed down to a few scenes. He's brought in to dispatch the vampire. Again, you go back to my 10-part Netflix
Not
idea.
registered.
You'd have whole episodes to explore him. But yeah, there's often a sort of shorthand. Anything that they will bring in a kind of, a kind of big actor to do the part and sort of sketch that stuff in very lightly, which is how you end up with Hopkins or Laurence Olivier or and sort of any of the others, really.
I think I found Nosferatu did quite a good. Obviously, it's a different character, but a very good take on Van Helsing as his more eccentric self. If you've seen the recent Nosferatu,
I have seen, yeah, I've seen the original Nosferatu, and of course this is 1970s
yes,
Nosferatu with Klaus Kinski, we just mentioned, playing Renfield, and there's the recent version as well. Yeah, there's the recent version as well.
yes.
Yes, I can say more. Did you enjoy that? Were you a fan of that version?
I enjoyed the vibes. I say the vibes were immaculate, as they say. Yeah, there are aspects of it that felt a little bit unnecessary. Occasionally, there were aspects of it that seemed to delve into the Coppola Dracula, but then I thought there were very interesting sort of Death and the Maiden fairy tale bits weaved through it, which I very much appreciate. In terms of Dracula adaptations, I thought it was pretty good. It's pretty interesting.
Yeah, it's definitely interesting, isn't it? I think it's obviously up against the original, which is this sort of weird, compelling masterpiece. So yeah, it's a tough comparison, I think, to come up with. Yeah, it's always an odd one, I think, Nosferatu, because it is this sort of bootleg
SWB audio capture
version of
not
Dracula,
registered.
and everyone knows a story that Bram Stoker's widow tried to have the film destroyed. It kind of has all that mythology around itself, doesn't it? But again, much like the Coppola, it kind of unpicks Dracula and it sort of destabilizes it. I mean, the Van Helsing figure is entirely useless in both versions.
Yes, the
Complete
Mina
waste.
figure did everything.
It's the sort of meaner avatar, isn't it? Who sort of saves people in both versions. versions. I thought the voice was a choice, a
Yes,
strong choice in the Robert Eggers version, which you either had to get on board with or not.
it was certainly distinct. You know, it sticks in your mind. It's like the Batman voice. You definitely remember it.
Yes, yeah, certainly in the cinema I saw it in, there was some unintentional laughs from the voice. There's quite a lot of dialogue as well. If you're going to do that voice, perhaps don't have a paragraph of speechifying each time, much like Batman, as you say.
So I'm just going to get up my little list to make sure we're going in the right direction. Yes. So currently that means we are 3 for 3 on Jonathan Harker as a potential favorite character, which is very interesting. It's not what we expected when we were asking people this question. But do you have a favorite scene or aspect from the original book?
I mean, again, from the original book, there's so many great scenes, aren't there? And again, it's a sort of, one of the standard responses is to say that the opening of the book is the strongest. But I really like the stuff once we're back in London. I mean, that's really where the modernity kicks in, I think, for me, because he starts out with a kind of mini Gothic novel of the kind that was, by that point, very old hat. I mean, we're 100 years on from the first flowering of Gothic, aren't we, give or take? But it's doing that to sort of set up the rules of it, and then taking it into contemporary England, which is great. I mean, there's again, when one does come back and reread it, which I haven't done for ages, because for a while I was so sort of immersed in Dracula, it can get a little much. But when I come back to it again, it's so many great bits you're looking forward to. Yes, the stuff at the opening, the boat. I mean, all the stuff on the boat. I still haven't seen the new film about the Demeter.
Oh, I recommend it. It's very interesting. It's a good take on that just particular aspect. I think it doesn't do very well in connecting it back into Dracula at the end. But in terms of what it is, I'd very much recommend it.
Yeah, so I mean, I love all that stuff, and I love the stuff once he's in England and moving about. The little scenes that are just hinted at, the business of Dracula at the zoo, which we only get through a newspaper clipping. There were a couple of bits when I dramatised it for Big Finish that you really had to go in and dramatise, and that was one of them. And I remember Scott, the director, saying, we need more scenes of Dracula because he's kind of barely in it. We've got Mr. Gatiss in the green room. We need to
we need to make him do things.
Yeah. So the scene at the zoo is great. One of the ones is a hoot, which I was able to put in our version of it, which again is you don't often see, is the bit in the cellar with the rats. And it's Arthur Holmwood. Is it Arthur Holmwood, I think, who produces a whistle?
Yes, and he has a load of terriers.
Yes, which I would like to see someone attempt on screen.
Working with rats and dogs, yeah.
I mean, it's so many things at once, isn't it? It is a horror story. But there's also kind of comic moments. It's a kind of thriller, adventurous moments. There's bits of kind of romance in there. There's all the sort of weird psychosexual subtext to it, by which people have long been fascinated. It is one of those texts you can go back to again and again and find different things. And also, I suspect, as you go through your life, you come back to it and you find different things each time, which is a marker, I would say, of a great work of fiction.
Oh, absolutely. And because it seems to be so many different books, there are so many aspects of it for a person to find interesting and to make their favorite one. It does sometimes feel like kind of 4 different novellas sort of stacked together.
Yeah, absolutely.
And you've sort of already answered this question, but can you tell us a little bit more about adapting Dracula for Big Finish? Because it is, you started off adapting the book straight, and then it sort of came continued on into 2 more sequels. So you've kind of had the fun of doing a straight adaptation and then writing your own thing for it, and then again writing Dracula's Child. So what progressed forward with those adaptations, and was there anything that you took forward into your book that was enhanced or changed by your experience with the other 2?
Yeah, I mean, there's been there's been so many Dracula sequels over the years. It was a challenge to come up with something with a different way of doing it, and certainly with we did the original version of Dracula with Big Finish, which was great. I went to, I think, at least one of the recording days, and everyone was very kind of up for it. It was a great cast, and I think everyone was. I remember Margate saying, it's great to be able just to do the book essentially. And one of the things I think I was able to do with that, which was probably less true of Frankenstein, is just to get out of the way of the story and just kind of find a way of shaping the story that it works in what turned out to be 3-hour-long installments. And certainly as a result of doing that, I thought, right, I want to write a novel. I'd published 3 novels by that point, but I was sort of out of contract, and I thought, well, I'm going to do something that I'm passionate about, and frankly is really going to amuse me. And I thought, well, I want to write this sequel to Dracula, because there's so many open-ended things at the end of Dracula. Are we really supposed to think that's the end of Dracula? This kind of weird connection that Mina has with him. There's loads of kind of unanswered questions. And again, although Dracula's come back again and again, hasn't he, in multiple sequels and so on, often it's like the Hammer thing that you've got 80 minutes
and then you got to kill him again.
Dracula's resurrected for sort of just a chunk of the film, runs around a bit, is staked immediately, back down again, a bit like sort of whack-a-mole with a vampire. So I wanted to do something on the same scale as Stoker, and one of the rules I set myself when I started doing these sequels is to say it's got to be a mirror of the original story, and it's got to reflect its kind of length and its scope and its ambition. And that was the attempt with Dracula's Child, that it's a kind of about a much more determined invasion by Dracula. The original novel, we're not quite sure what he's acting out of, really. But this time the invasion happens again, and it's motivated by revenge. Taken from a line at the end of the book, and he says, my plan will last 1,000 years, or whatever he says. So there was that. I was sort of about 30,000 words into that when Scott phoned me up and said, would you like to write a sequel to Dracula? And I said, well, I'm writing a sequel to Dracula. He said, do you fancy writing another sequel to Dracula? We're going to get Mark Gatiss back into the studio. So I said, well, yeah, obviously I'd love to. So what we ended up doing for that, because again, you always run into the law of diminishing returns with the sequel, is that I wrote a prequel first. As you will know, there's that very odd short story, Dracula's Guest, that Stoker wrote, and no one's ever quite sure whether it's an off-cut from the novel.
Is it Jonathan Harker? Some people have said it's Renfield. Some people said it's a completely different person, unconnected to Dracula.
Yes, it's very odd, isn't it? It's very odd, and it doesn't quite match up with the story. The idea that would have been an episode that was cut. Maybe it was. I'm not enough of a scholar to be able to know exactly kind of where that's come from, and I think the jury is out on it. But anyway, so I thought, well, let's start with that and let's do our version. Any adaptation, any sequel or prequel, you're always doing your version with the, as you know, with the acceptance. There's many other versions coming. So we did our version with Dracula's Guest, which I think worked very well because most of it was Stoker, a bit of invention from me, but huge chunks of it are just the Stoker text. And then we did a couple of we did a prequel around that. Looked into Dracula a little bit without going full Gary Oldman, and we did an hour-long prequel as part of that box set about Renfield, which was a lot of fun. and seeing what Renfield was like before his madness. So that worked very well. But then we did a sequel that's set in World War One, which I think is harder. It's harder to do a sequel at that point. So yeah, that was the sort of triptych. But yeah, I'm very I'm pleased with all of it. But I think particularly pleased with the prequel.
Yeah, I think it's so amazing that you were able to spin this whole world out of this and then write your own sequel as well. You must have been sick of Dracula by the end of it.
Never
Congratulations.
never sick of Dracula. I was ready for something else. Although I did, the ending of the Dracula sequel we did, which was called Dracula's War, set up another sequel, because it's spoilers for anyone that hasn't heard Dracula's War, which you can still get from Big Finish, but it indicates a possible sequel, which I thought would be great to do, a kind of American set, Great Gatsby, Dracula and Gatsby kind of
That'd
mashup.
Amazing.
In America, which I think could be fun. But
Right, I'm getting on to Big Finish for you. We'll do it.
please do, yes.
I mean, this is purely a personal question, and feel free not to answer it. But having worked with Gattis on these 3 Dracula CDs, what did you then think of Gattis's own Dracula 2020 when it came out?
Well, I think he was. I think he was thinking about it at the time, because I think the message came down that he wanted to play the Count, and Big Finish were very happy to accommodate that. But I think at the time he was thinking about doing his own version of Dracula. So that was obviously part of it. I think just trying to do a really sort of straightforward, authentic version, and then coming up with his own. And then when we saw him again, and he came in and did the prequels, I remember chatting to him then, and he said there was going to be this new Dracula, and he said it's got everything that you expect to be in it, but not in the order you expect it to be in, which turned out to be the case. I thought, well, like all of these adaptations that we're talking about, including our own, it's got its moments, hasn't it? It's got its moments, and then it's got things that people's mileage varies on.
I did not expect the time travel aspect. That caught me completely off guard.
Yes, and you can see what they were going for with it. Again, I remember him talking when we were doing in the studio with the Big Finish stuff that he loved Dracula 1976. Is it 5,
Yes.
4?
I always get it. It's my favorite Dracula adaptation, and I can never remember the exact date of it. But yeah, Dracula AD. Yes.
Dracula 1970 something AD. Yeah, he absolutely loves that, because that in a way is what Stoker is doing, isn't it? Which is bringing the Gothic figure and plunging him into the 1890s, and it's just updating it. But that's doing it. Stoker was doing it when Dracula was new, whereas trying to do it now. I mean, it's interesting and it's worthwhile, isn't it? But again, I mean, go back and do Dracula from the novel, 10 episodes, 10 hours. That's my pitch.
We'll get you there. We'll get you those scripts. So, having now talked about Dracula, what can you tell us about your latest book? I keep wanting to say Frankenstein. That was our last interview. Frankenstein's Monster, your recently published latest Gothic novel.
Yeah, well, yeah. I mean, Frankenstein's Monster again is the same sort of task, really, because you're sort of trying to channel the original author, and you're saying, where are the leads in a way, and Dracula was in a way quite straightforward, because there are all these kind of loose ends at the end of Dracula. And again, when I did the Island of Dr. Moreau, did a sequel to that called The City of Dr. Moreau, Wells leaves things kind of wide open, and there's all sorts of, Dr. Moreau dies, spoilers in the eye of Dr. Moreau, but there's still people wandering about on the island, and it's all kinds of things. Frankenstein is different, and again, you go into these texts and you adapt them, or you write a sequel or a prequel to them, and every time your respect only increases for what they've done. And I'll happily go on record for saying that Frankenstein was the most difficult one so far, by a long way, because I'm not sure it's really people say, oh, Mary Shelley invented science fiction, or Mary Shelley was the first modern horror writer, or whatever. And I'm kind of not sure it's either of those things, really. Again, it's a deeply odd, strange book, and probably out of the three of them, the closest to something like genius. So it's a great act of hubris to even consider writing a sequel to it. So yeah, I did find it difficult. It took me about 2.5 years to write it, and it's quite a slim book.
Not registered.
But yeah, it is. Yeah, it is a difficult one. It's a challenging one, and I think as a result of that, it's I'm proud of the results. But yes, you're going back into it. You're looking at the original story, and you're finding the scope. So I've always thought there's something odd at the end of Frankenstein, that the monster disappears. Victor conveniently dies, having just told the last of his story, and the sea captain just says, "Oh well, I'll come back to England then," after having said that. So those are the two threads that I pick up on, because I don't buy either of those developments really. And the other thing I had a lot of fun with is the structure of it. I mean, part of the brilliance of Frankenstein, I think, that it is about someone who is a creature of fragments really, and yet it's built up out of fragments and nested stories nested inside, one inside the other. And Shelley takes us very, very deep. Story told to the creature, who tells it to Victor, who tells it to the sea captain, who tells it to his sister in a letter. I've had a lot of fun with that, and I've hopefully pulled off some similar tricks.
That's such a good sell for your book. Where can people find it if they would like to purchase a copy?
Well, anywhere, hopefully.
All around the place.
People say, yeah, good bookshops, Waterstones. It is on Amazon. But yeah, and you can always order it in. That's what you're supposed to say, isn't it? Go and see your independent bookseller, get them to order it in. So yes, please do that.
And a fantastic Halloween. I mean, all three of your novels would make a fantastic Halloween read. Just saying.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Well, brilliant. Thank you so much. That is the end of my questions. Is there anything else that you would like to plug? Anything else that you would like to add before we come to the end of this interview?
No, not really. I think I've plugged sufficiently. No, just to say it's been great. It's been a real privilege. Yeah, best of luck with season 2 going forward.
Thank you. Yes. Yeah, we are. I will do my own plugging as we come to the end. As Johnson said, we are currently kickstarting for season 2 of the Holmwood Foundation. Theo will put links all over the place when we come to post this. We have recently hit, we're just about to hit 6K. We would love some more support. So even if you can't donate at this time, sharing, reviewing, fan works, anything helps. If you would like to see what happens moving forward, then please do consider checking us out. And thank you so much. And thank you so much for being around today, Jonathan. It's been really lovely chatting to you.
Not at all. Been a pleasure.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.